Have you noticed that our hobbies don't always feel very much like hobbies anymore? And I think this is especially true for any hobby that involves creativity, especially photography. So in this video, we're going to unpack that, and I'm going to share some reasons to be optimistic about how we can regain that feeling of just escapism from the things that we do for recreation. Now, I think the trouble with social media and this hustle culture that we've all been exposed to is that it's creating the illusion that our downtime, our recreational time, is almost like time wasted, and we should be trying to fill our recreational time with things that are going to benefit us as individuals, things that are going to maybe enhance our skills in a particular area or develop us as people in some kind of way. And this is very much the antithesis of what hobbies initially were. Hobbies have always been designed to be that form of escapism that takes us out of that hustle culture and the hamster wheel of life. Can you just take photos anymore, or does there have to be some kind of purpose or some kind of outcome attached to that activity? It's important to ask yourself these questions. Is photography still about taking photos that you like? Or is it about trying to define your niche and find your own style? And are you taking photos because of how well they might fit in on your Instagram grid? Or are you being influenced by the work of other people that you see exceeding or excelling at photography, and do you want to replicate that level of success? There's all of these external factors that are maybe influencing how we actually engage with our cameras. I think if you look at YouTube as an example, and don't worry, I know that I am probably part of this problem, but you've probably all seen YouTube videos with titles such as "Do this if you want to be a pro photographer," or "Pro photographers do this," or "5 ways to make money with photography," or "Do these things if you want to improve your photography." We are all fed this kind of narrative that the reason that we do photography is to improve and to constantly progress and to constantly take our photography somewhere. There's always ambition and there's some kind of end goal attached to it. And there are very few videos that just demonstrate how photography can just be very inconsequential, that it can just be fun and something that we do purely for the act of doing it, for the enjoyment and the benefit that that provides us. And that gets me thinking about my content and the content that I make on this channel, because there is definitely a conflict. Because if you make videos on YouTube, these videos take a long time to make, to script, to film, to edit, and we want these videos to get seen by people. And unfortunately, the videos that many people want to watch and the videos that the algorithm favor are those sorts of videos with the very clickable titles and the thumbnails that kind of grab your attention. But I'm finding that those are becoming less and less interesting to me, and they're not necessarily the videos that I want to make. I'm trying to shift my content to make it more about exploring creativity, about sharing ideas as opposed to absolutes, and highlighting the playful side of photography, the experimental side of photography that I think we are all susceptible to neglect from time to time. I think so many photographers have inadvertently become very rigid in their approach to photography, and it's often due to things like social pressures. If you think about Instagram, for example, people want to have the very curated grid with a very defined style. They want to categorize their photography. They want to fit inside a niche or a style because it's very neat and tidy, and it means that they're able to more easily reach an audience and reach people who are maybe also into that style of photography. And whilst I think that is absolutely fine and certainly has its place, I think it has led to a bit of a culture around photography that potentially make photographers slightly more hesitant to experiment and to push the boundaries of these very self-imposed and self-inflicted rules and restrictions. Remember, rules are there to be broken for the most part, especially in kind of artistic and creative disciplines. We should be open to experiment, and we shouldn't be afraid of failure, because I think this sort of failure ideology in photography often comes from things like vanity metrics. How we measure failure is things like our photos not getting enough likes on Instagram, or not having enough subscribers on YouTube, or enough followers on X, for example, when really these are not the measurements of success and failure in photography. And that's why I started my podcast, because I just want to share more ideas. I just want to give people things to think about and give them gentle encouragement to experiment and to just explore new ways of thinking and new ways of approaching photography, because that's what hobbies always were. You always used to do your hobby just for yourself. You were never afraid to fail, you were never afraid to experiment, and you were never afraid to just go where your curiosity took you. And I think that's something that we need to get back to, and we need to put more emphasis on that as photographers. But what's the root cause of this mindset? Well, it's because we've taken all the things that we used to do just for fun, just for the sake of doing them, and we've turned them into another form of work. The problem with approaching our hobbies like our work is that we're constantly measuring our performance and our output, if you like. Take running, for example. There used to be a time where you would just lace up your running shoes and go out for a run for the pure benefits of running and for the sake of exercise and health. But nowadays, people are going out on their run and they're looking at, their pace, their time, their heart rate zones, and then they're sharing that on Strava and maybe taking a few photos on their run and sharing them on Instagram stories. And, you spend more time documenting your hobby than actually doing the hobby itself. I'm guilty of that as well, doing this YouTube channel. I should be able to just go out with my camera and enjoy taking photos, but I'm always thinking about the video, about the story, about how to capture, my photography sessions, and I'm thinking about the script and the thumbnail and the titles, and, I'm spending so much time worrying about the documentation of the hobby when really I should just be focusing on the actual hobby and focusing on the photography. Another contributing factor to all of this is just the state of the world in 2025. I mean, we are all probably overworked, undervalued, definitely underpaid. Cost of living is rising at a disproportionate rate to wages, and I think we're all just trying to find ways to make work something that we love. This is definitely something that I did back in 2020 when the big terrible thing was happening in the world. I completely hated my job. I hated working from home, and I decided to throw in the towel and focus on what I loved, and that was photography, and I wanted to make photography my livelihood. And I think because of sort of the economic struggles at the moment, a lot of people are turning to side hustles. They do want to be able to have more autonomy, they want to be able to make more money using the things that they love, and those are often our hobbies, because we already possess the skills, we already possess the equipment, we already possess, the know-how, and it becomes like an easy win. It doesn't require us to go back to university and retrain or anything like that. It's just a case of using the things that we are already passionate about and trying to pursue them a little bit further. And I do often ask myself this question whenever I have these like existential crises about whether I'm doing the right thing with my life of, do I regret making my hobby my job? And on some days, sadly I do, because really there are very few days now where I'm not doing photography. I'm picking up my camera at least a few times a week, but the reality is that it's rarely on my own terms. It's always because I have a client job and I need to deliver a certain gallery of images or a particular video, and the reality is not every single one of those jobs is getting me particularly fired up about the work. Not every job is going to be creatively fulfilling. Sometimes, like with any job, it is just about paying the bills and sacrificing some of that enjoyment. I think there are very few creatives out there who are freelancers that are able to solely make a living just by creating the stuff that they want to make. I think if you're in that position, you're very lucky. And I think for the rest of us, it is about sort of taking the jobs that are maybe slightly less inspiring for the end goal of, stability financially. And that means that there's often very little left in the tank for me when it comes to my downtime, to actually do photography as a hobby, which is definitely something that I want to do because I am passionate about photography and I absolutely love it. I often think about it this way. Photography used to be the thing that filled up my cup when it got to the end of a busy week of work and I needed some reason to just feel recharged and to have a bit of escapism. But now photography is the thing that also depletes that cup. I often get to the end of a busy week of shoots and the last thing I want to do is pick up my camera because I don't have any creative energy left in the tank to actually make anything that I consider to be half decent. So what's the answer? How do we resolve this? Where's the hope in this dilemma? Well, for me, it's just being very strict when it comes to the intention of my photography. It's accepting that I don't always need to be making great photos. I don't need to be traveling to beautiful, far-flung destinations. I don't need to be always working on a project and a deadline. And I don't need to attach a purpose to every single outing with my camera. I just need to go out, observe the world, and take the photos that I want to take. And all of this has been pretty transformative for my own relationship with my photography. It's become a lot more sustainable now because I'm still able to, do my client work, deliver my photography on time. I'm not sacrificing the work side of photography, but I'm kind of keeping everything that doesn't directly, relate to me making money. I'm keeping that just very, very loose and very, very relaxed. And I'm not attaching too much purpose and too much restriction to my personal photography. And it's just led to me having a far better time with it. I'm now feeling more motivated to go out and make photos. We're heading to North Wales for 3 or 4 days for Alex's birthday. Over the weekend, we're staying in sort of like around Carnarvon, so near Anglesey, near the mountains, near the Llyn Peninsula. I'm going to take my camera, I'm going to explore, I'm going to shoot some film, and, there's not going to be any other purpose attached to that trip other than just kind of enjoying being in the landscape, enjoying some good company, some good memories, and I'm sure good photos will come as a result of that. I think if I went into this trip worrying about sort of making YouTube videos or, trying to make the most of being in these very beautiful places, I think it would diminish the experience of the trip. And the chances are I'd probably overthink it so much that I'd come back feeling slightly disappointed with the images. So this is just my gentle reminder for you all to be mindful of that in your own photography. And I hope that helps and offers some perspective and some things to think about. Ask yourself some of these questions and see how you feel about them. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video and found it helpful, do hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and leave a comment down below. It's always great to hear from you, and I always gain so much from hearing your insights and your perspective on these topics. So, yeah, look forward to chatting with you all down there. Anyway, I will leave it there. See you all next week for another one.